Hey guys, welcome to software testing interview question series. So in the last video, we have seen an interview question about if you have weekly releases, what is your automation coverage and what is your test strategy. So in this video, we are going to cover a question from Lakshmi from company ADP. Okay, so the question what she faced in ADP interview is how do individuals manage to perform in sprint automation given a 2 week sprint, especially when developers typically spend half of the time in development. So this is a common scenario in almost most of the projects what I have seen. So you have a 2 week sprint, that means typically a 10 to 11 working days, in where up to 7 to 8 working days developers spend time on development, and it comes to QA phase in the last 2 or 3 days. So though there are a lot of discussion will happen within team to avoid it, but ultimately most of the time testers receive the build before 2-3 days of closing sprint. Okay, so the question here is what will a QAs do until then? So there are a lot of things a QA can do, right? So we will go into deeper analysis of each and everything here, preparing test scenarios. So in your sprint, let's say there are 2 QAs in the team. If you are owning up at least 3 to 4 user stories in a sprint, so until those come into QA phase, you can start actually creating test scenarios for it. Usually people when say test scenarios, they write a test cases expected actual result, right? System testing. I mean to say not just system testing. You can actually think about what kind of scenarios fits for this. Like, can we do API testing or can we do UI testing? So what scenarios can go to UI layer? What scenarios can go in API layer? Does it involve any unit testing? If so, you need to tell your developer prior itself saying that these are the scenarios which needs to be covered as part of unit testing, because developer is the one who writes unit test cases and integration tests. So integration test could be like more or less like API testing only, or even developers also can write some integration tests on Spring Boot, right? So it's not that every scenario you need to cover on UI side. That is very bad practice, right? You need to segregate them, layer them, and talk to your developer, business analyst, right? So you can take their inputs, show them the scenarios where you are covering in different layers, right? All that discussion can be done in the time being when developers are actively working on the story. If you have 3 stories in your hand, that itself takes a lot of time in back and forth between BA, developer, and you about preparing test scenarios, asking them see if it comes into coverage, or asking developer to cover in unit layer, right? That is one thing. And next, test data. So some of the applications need to configure test data for every scenario. It's not that it's available ready-madely all there, right? You need to sometimes configure the test data based upon your requirements. You should make the test data ready instead of figuring out test data when build is ready with you, because you don't have much time. It's all about 2 days, right? You can work on the test data setup also after you complete scenarios. So this is step one, right? Without knowing the scenarios, what kind of test data you set up? So these two will follow in sequence. And once you are ready, if that story demands automation, you can start building test automation skeleton for that scenario. When I say skeleton, that means creating new test case, new test file in your project. If it's a Cucumber based, you can develop the feature file, you can build the step definition skeleton, right? And for scenario itself, let's say the scenario involves 10 steps. Probably in the last sprint, 1 to 6 steps could have already been developed. You can create that 6 steps already by copy pasting from other script and make your logic ready. Let's say in this sprint, developer is working on sorting the table. Then you can prior complete the sorting code if it's in JavaScript, right? Once build is there, you can replace with the table objects, but the logic behind it can be written. So lot of skeleton can be completed even before your code is ready. All you need is a objects, locators, if it's a UI. If it's an API, then you can ask them contract before itself. And based upon contract, you can create POJO classes. I hope you are able to, correlate from my REST API automation course about what is POJO classes, what is serialization, deserialization, right? And this is classic example you can talk, because you will have the contract before itself, though you don't have the actual response. So with a mock request, with a mock response, you can go ahead and build the complete API automation test. Okay. So once the real response comes into picture, all you need to do is a swap with the proper endpoints. But that POJO classes, deserialization thing, everything will be ready. So all this you can prepare, which you can do before you get it into build. And apart from that, this is a sprint work. We already saw how much sprint work we have. Apart from this, there will be something, a regression suite in your project, obviously, because every sprint you write so many tests. There could be 100, 200 tests which are already having within place. You need to maintain them as well, right? You need to run them on daily basis, see what are failing, and you need to fix them if it's a script issue. If it is something related to app, then you need to raise a defects, and you need to catch up with the existing defects. What is their status, if it's ready for testing? It's just not about the stories of the sprint. So the overall question point here is how they manage perform automation in a 2-week sprint, especially when developers give it last moment. So when you get it last moment, if you follow these steps, you have test cases ready, you have test data ready, you have automation skeleton ready. Then how much time you need, you just to incorporate objects, or if it's API testing, the JSON contract. So 90% of the work you are doing here, it's about the only logic. Okay. So that's how you can answer them and explain how the activity is being performed. And at the same time, we can use this answer if people ask, what does QA do when developers are spending their time in developing the feature? What could be typical QA activities in the meantime before the build comes into testing phase? What are the activities they will perform? So for both the questions, this is this common answer you can justify. Okay. So I hope this clarifies Lakshmi question on what she got asked in one of her interview. That's all, guys. In the next lecture, let's come up with another question on the software testing real-time scenarios. Thank you.